Tonight we're going to discuss how we acquired our third and fourth cash flowing rental properties in less than 1 year. Welcome back to the channel, guys. Let's dive into property number 3.
Property number 3 is in Elma, just like our second.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And the cool thing about this property is how close property 2 and property 3 locations are. It's kind of just like a hop, skip, and a jump away from each other. It's honestly probably one of my favorite things when we found this property.
Let's do a deep dive into the numbers. So the property was listed on MLS for $74,000. I believe our original offer was $65K. After some negotiating back and forth, we settled on $68,000. We used a conventional loan. We still had plenty of money in our savings from when we did the cash out refinance. So this is how we were able to fund this property. After covering closing costs and everything else, we were right around, I want to say it was like $19,000-$20,000 was what it was total out of pocket to close. The property currently rents for $875. Yes, $875,
yeah.
And
it's a 1 bed, 1 bath, 2 bed, 1 bath.
Nope. Yeah, it's a 2 bed, 1 bath, but one of the bedrooms is incredibly tiny.
Mm-hmm.
And the property, for the most part, is turnkey. The only thing we did is put gutters on it. We are huge into gutters and vapor barriers and anything we can do to run water away from the property. What did you do with this property?
So, kind of like, I don't know, it's one of those, it was kind of the I'm saying kind of a lot because I don't know how to explain it, but it was the first property that I really got involved in. And I was always involved in the process. I was always, I went and toured the properties. I was part of the buying process. I was, participating in finding tenants in our first 2 properties. But this is the one that I really kind of jumped in and did a lot of kind of the beginning maintenance stuff, so to speak.
So with the first few properties, she was on board. She liked the ideas of the rentals. She liked the long term of it, but she still really hadn't bought in. I was still doing most of all the work. I was running all the numbers. I was figuring out if the property made sense. I was working with the lender. I was pretty much doing everything. And this property is where it really changed to where
it kind of kicked in for me. I kind of found where I wanted to be in the part that I wanted to participate in. So I kind of jumped in. I started doing all the cleaning and kind of prepping that property for a tenant. And so that was kind of, like I said, the first one that I kind of started doing that with, overall. I remember spending a whole day there, cleaning and scrubbing and kind of making inventory of what needed to be done, some caulking, just random things. But
and with this property, it was neat because the tenant that we brought in, their house had recently burned down. They were kind of struggling, and so we were excited to be able to bring this. And then not only that, but the tenant was incredibly handy himself. So I think they had been living there about a week, and we received a text message, and it said, "Hey, I found a washer and dryer hookup, and which was in the kitchen, basically right next to the sink, and then the dryer was actually in the second bedroom." He's like, "Hey, if I can get this set up, can I use it?" And I said, "Absolutely. Mm-hmm. If you can get that set up at no cost to myself, and you can get it up and running, and you want to put a washer and dryer, I'm like, please do so. I'm not going to tell you no." So he texted me back the next day. He's like, "Hey, everything's all set," and he sent me a picture of the washer and dryer. So it was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was very handy and, awesome tenants to have. The cool thing about this is they recently have moved out, but such great tenants. They actually referred someone to us that was a family member that is now actually living in that exact property. So it's been a great rental. It's very successful. Did you say what it cash flows at?
It's about $150, $175 a month. And it's on a very large lot, mm-hmm. which is important because our tenants have dogs.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things we look at is, does the property have enough land to support someone who has a dog?
Yeah.
And with this property, I forgot earlier that we also had to replace the stove pretty soon into it. One of the burners wasn't working,
It was
And
like within like just a week or so, wasn't it?
yeah, and so just out of concern, we had bought it with the stove in it. We just we try to take care of our tenants. To us, that's the utmost important. And so we replaced the stove. I think it was like $700 from like Home Depot.
Delivered it right there. It was super easy.
They delivered it. The tenant actually installed it himself. He said he was more than willing to do that. And so between the gutters, which were right around like I think it was like $1,040, and the stove, which was $700, I think we were all in for this property for less than $70K, right?
Yeah,
So, and it's doing very well.
it is. Yeah. Property number 4.
That's a whole different
It's a
story.
different story.
So property number 4, actually, outside of property being one, which is our favorite because it really got us going, property number 4 might be my absolute favorite property. It is a
Beautiful.
2-bed, 1-bath, 1,200 square feet. It's got an attached garage, a huge backyard, and it's just in a gorgeous neighborhood. It's like 0.4 miles from the college, 1.7 miles from the hospital. And when we originally bought this property, we actually considered making it an Airbnb because it was so close to these areas. During this time, COVID was just now starting to die down, and traveling nurses was all the rage. I actually had posted some things in traveling nurses sites to kind of see what it would rent for as like a midterm rental. And do you remember why we decided not to?
Well, it ultimately came down to, for with a short-term rental, you have to furnish the rental, and so we could furnish a rental, or we could buy another property. And so, based on where we were in our kind of journey, we wanted to kind of continue building our portfolio. So we chose to make it a long-term rental and then continue buying. So,
and it was at this point where the money that we had from our cash out refinance was starting to run low. After we purchased property 4, we wanted to make sure we had plenty of reserves just in case if a roof or anything else went. We wanted to have those reserves just in case. So we decided to make it a long-term rental. And let's get into the numbers a little bit. Do you remember how much we purchased it for? No. So the property was listed for $65K, which was an absolute steal.
Was it seriously $65K?
It was. And so we offered asking, and I received a call from the listing agent, and he's like, hey, your conventional loan with, I think we did like a $5K earnest money deposit. They're like, that's the strongest offer. However, we have offers in that are higher than that we're considering. Are you willing to increase your offer? And this is why I always talk about the importance of a high earnest money deposit and always use a conventional loan. Obviously, if you can't pay cash, cash is king. But if you can use a conventional loan, realtors love to see that and buyers love to see that because you're most likely to close. And so I was like, absolutely. Like, what are you thinking? He refused to give me a number. I'm like, all right, I can go up to 79K. I'm sorry. I can go up to 89K. And he's like, absolutely great. I'll send you over the offer and we'll get it all set tonight. So we agreed on 89.
And I think the piece here that we need to point on is when you look at this house, 89K is still a steal. Like, it's unbelievable.
And that's one of the things is when you're running your numbers, you have to figure out what you want to pay and what's the most you're willing to pay. This property's ARV right now is probably 120 to 130. Mm-hmm. So the purchase equity in this property is right around 30K. So the moment we closed, we purchased $30,000 in equity. Mm-hmm. So that's just great. We made $30,000 in cash just by buying it. Mm-hmm. So a little bit more of the numbers of the property. So the property currently rents for $1,200. The living room is just massive.
Enormous.
If we wanted to, we could split the living room up and add a third bedroom. But at this point, I just don't see it necessary. I forgot that the whole headache during closing.
Yeah, you've missed that little part.
Yeah, so when we were in the closing process, it was sent to underwriting, and in the seller's disclosure, it said the attic had vermiculite. So myself, I had done tons of research on vermiculite. Some vermiculite can and for those who don't know, vermiculite is the insulation that is in the attic. Some vermiculite, depending on, I think it's like 1958, anything after 1958, don't quote me on the years, but some of it has asbestos in it and some of it doesn't. And so underwriting refused to give us the loan until the vermiculite was tested. So I reached out to the listing agent and I said, hey, they won't give us this loan and we're going to have to pull out unless we can get this tested. Because if you leave asbestos alone and it doesn't go airborne, it's fine. It's not going to hurt anybody. For this property, the furnace, the hot water heater, everything was on the main floor. So there's no reason to go in the attic whatsoever. So I wasn't worried about it. But the bank refused to give us the loan. So at that point, I reached out to the agent and he's like, actually, it's already been tested and it is asbestos. I'm like, isn't that something that you should put on the seller's disclosure? He's like, well, I said it was vermiculite. I was like, but you already had it tested. So it comes off as very sketchy to me. Myself as a real estate agent, if I knew that it was tested, I would have listed it as vermiculite with asbestos because it comes off as very shady. So I was like, okay, so what are we going to do? Because now we know that it is asbestos. We know that we can't close with it there. What is the plan? So immediately, Danny and I knew what the property was worth. We knew that we would be willing to pay to get it mitigated. So we were like, hey, we will pay $4,000 to get it mitigated, and then the sellers cover the rest. And so because we offered that large amount right away, they're like, oh yeah, that's great. We'll send you over an addendum to the purchase agreement. So the sellers ended up paying $8,000. We paid $4,000, and so it was $12,000 total to get it done. And then it was just back and forth with that realtor. They ended up having to do like an air quality test to make sure everything was done. So instead of like the standard like 4 to 6 week closing process, I think it took us like 3 months to close on this property.
I was just gonna say, how long did it actually take us to close? Because it was a long.
It was about
time.
3 months because, and in Michigan, it's very standard to close within 4 weeks. Yeah. And our last two, we closed right around 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. So this whole process was just a massive headache, just a lot of going back and forth with the realtor.
But if we ever get into the situation again, we know exactly how to deal with it.
Correct.
So up to this point, we now have 4 properties under our belt, all cash flowing right around $1,500 a month total. So doing pretty good. If you guys have any questions or comments, please drop them in the comments below. Please like, subscribe, and watch our other videos. See you next time.